All right. Today we're here with our guest, Tom, and I'm super excited about this one because I think, for one, it's highly controversial subject and one that I think a lot of people may even have a hard time believing it actually exists. But today, the topic we're going to speak about is Agenda 21, also known as Agenda 2030, correct?
Yep.
And you're the expert on it, so I'm going to just kind of give you the floor. I may have a question or two in between if you say something that I'm unfamiliar with, but I'm just going to let you kind of roll with it and just kind of explain what it is that you have over the years. I've seen that you've really been speaking about this for quite some time now. So what is it that you've come to know? Give us kind of the full start to finish on this and give us an understanding of what we're looking at here.
I'll do that. And if I say something and don't hesitate to ask me a question about it, because I have
Perfect.
done it so many times that
I
I just
definitely
roll
will. So
right
thank
through
you
it.
very much.
Might roll right past you. So yeah. Well, there have been movements since the inception of the United Nations to create a global governance. Some of those who helped put it together clear back in the 1940s after World War II, that was their intention in the first place. Back in the 1970s, that started to get more serious, and they started having various meetings to discuss how to put that into place. And one of the things that they latched on, when the Soviet Union fell and people thought communism is over, and what they came up with was using the environment, the fear factor of environmental Armageddon, that if we don't save the planet, then we won't have a planet to stand on. And this was the argument that they started to use to get people to voluntarily give up their personal liberties, nations to start to surrender their sovereignty, and have this kind of a control over everything. First of all, in 1992, they held the Earth Summit in Rio de Janeiro, and there were something like 5,000 delegates at this. That included not only about 92 heads of state, including George H.W. Bush, but also lots of diplomats and what we call non-governmental organizations, NGOs. These are private organizations that have their own agendas, and they work in the background of the United Nations to help put together the treaties, the policy programs, things like that. And 5,000 people there, they weren't there for a picnic on the beach. They were there for some serious work. And they put together there were four different things that they presented at Agenda 21, at the Earth Summit. But the main one was Agenda 21. And what they said that Agenda 21 was a comprehensive blueprint for the reorganization of human society. That is a pretty incredible statement.
Yeah.
What does that all mean? And again, everything in it based on climate change. Now, they have the logo that they use to promote Agenda 21 and all these policies, and you'll see this in all kinds of documents. They talk about three connecting circles. It kind of looks like a Olympic flag or something, but they're all each marked. This is what it looks like, the three connecting circles. Mm-hmm. One of them is marked ecological integrity. That means the environment. One is economic economic prosperity, and which is all businesses and so forth. And the other one, the final one, is social equity. Now, everything we hear today is all about equity, equity, equity. There it is, right there in this comprehensive blueprint for the reorganization of human society. This interacts every single part of our lives, everything, our economy, the ground we walk on, social equity, and which overrides in most cases the rule of law. Just watch what's happening today in courtrooms and in as our elected officials are making rules and regulations and so forth, it's overriding the rule of law, the Constitution, and so forth, social equity. Now, what they came up with, well, it was diabolical. What they came up with was a plan to using the environment to decide everything, the fear of environmental Armageddon. And what they targeted in going after that were the three pillars of freedom: free enterprise, private property, and individual choice. And we see all this coming together step by step. Now, let me just give you some quotes of some of the people who worked to put this all together. The UN said this: effective execution of Agenda 21 will require a profound reorientation of all human society, unlike anything the world has ever experienced. A major shift in the priorities of both governments and individuals, and an unprecedented redeployment of human and financial resources. This shift will demand that a concern for the environmental consequences of every human action be integrated into individual and collective decision-making at every level. Can it be any clearer? Blake, for 30 years, as I have been trying to explain this to people, I have been called a conspiracy theorist, a nutcase, spreading rumors, lies, and so forth.
Sure.
All I have ever done is quote them. I'm not creative enough to make this stuff up, And as I've done that, one of the NGO organizations that works directly with the UN putting these things together is a group called the Club of Rome. They said this at about the same time: the common enemy of humanity is man. In searching for a new enemy to unite us, we came up with the idea that pollution, the threat of global warming, water shortages, famine, and the like would fit the bill. All of these dangers are caused by human intervention, and it is only through changed attitudes, behaviors that they can be overcome. The real enemy then is humanity itself. That's amazing. Just
Pretty
amazing.
clear right there.
Yeah. One of the precursors for Agenda 21, as I said, they had these several conferences back in the 70s. They called them habitat conferences. And these were looking at the environment, looking at how human society was set up. And at Habitat 1 conference in 1976, they said this in their report, quote, land cannot be treated as an ordinary asset controlled by individuals and subject to the pressures and inefficiencies of the market. Private land ownership is also a principal instrument of accumulation and concentration of wealth, therefore contributes to social injustice.
Wow.
The United States became a wealthy nation almost overnight because of private property. Private property ownership is the way that the average citizen can build their own personal wealth. This is what we do. We buy property, we build on it, we improve it, eventually maybe sell it, we make money from it, we buy some other land, do the same thing, building personal wealth. Now we're told that that is a social inequity, that should not be done. Somehow that is racist. Now, if that sounds outrageous for me to say that, let me tell you, the biggest assault that we are having right now in putting this together is an absolute assault on single family neighborhoods, homes in single family neighborhoods where you have a backyard for the kids to play in, you have a driveway for your car, you've got 2 or 3, 4 people living in the house as your family. And they have now focused on this after they have created all of this government housing, all of this low income housing that is turned into absolute torture chambers for people living there because government runs it, not personal individuals who own the property. And as that has happened, they're now looking at these single family neighborhoods and they're saying, gee, that's not fair that those people live in those neighborhoods and other people have to live in these collective housing operations. And so what we're going to do is we're going to get rid of zoning protections for those single family neighborhoods, and we're going to bring public housing into those areas so those people can enjoy the grass and walk around and all, so on and so forth. And the mayor of Minneapolis said that single zoning for single family neighborhoods is racist because people living there are self-segregating themselves from people they don't want to live next to. Now, we've got all kind of rules that say you can't discriminate on people to move into these neighborhoods, to live together, if you can afford the building, if you can afford the house. But all of a sudden, that's all racist. And what did we have in the Agenda 21? We've got social equity as one of the main parts of it. That's what all of this is. What we see happening here in our communities all over the country is a policy called smart growth. And smart growth, they sell it as everybody's going to live close together, and you won't need cars to get around. You won't have those traffic jams to block up all the roads and everything. You can walk to work, you can ride your bike to the grocery, and it will have park space right there and everything. It'll be just wonderful. And if you need to go somewhere else, you get into public transportation. This has been the root of smart growth. And what you see happening in almost every community now are high-rise, what we call stack and pack high-rises, where you have in one building, up on the top floors, you have apartments for people to live in. On the lower floors, you have offices. And on the bottom floors, you have stores. This is what they call smart growth. And
Is it okay if I ask you a quick question on that?
sure, absolutely. Yeah.
So I saw a map recently, just going through kind of researching into the subject, and it obviously was covering a lot of what you just said as far as just the main general population. Kind of the idea is that there will be no ownership anymore, that we will be fully dependent on the state for everything. No need for, personal transportation. There'll be public transportation. But the map that I saw, and you can tell me if this is just something some random guy on the internet put up, or if this is part of the plan that you've heard of, but it looked like it had certain areas on the map that were very small, like black zones of where they supposedly intend to kind of take population out of certain areas, so that they can use that for their own purposes and growing and whatever they're building and doing. But they'll basically corral the rest of the population into certain zones so that they're easier to control and basically do exactly what you're saying. Stack them up in high rise buildings, essentially make it sound great, give it to them for free, take care of them, give them almost a, like a, what am I trying to say? Where everybody gets kind of a earned, or a not earned, but a global income for everybody.
Universal income.
Universal
Yeah.
income, exactly. So it's just basically they're going to make it sound great, right? Like, especially with my generation nowadays, it seems like they want everything for free. So it sounds like a great move at first, but they're giving up all their freedoms in the process.
Well, the idea that everyone will be equal, and you hear the attacks on the wealthy and how they have no right to be so rich when other people don't have that. And so what they end up doing is taking away all the opportunities for individuals to build their own wealth in that manner. And yeah, eventually you put all this together, everybody is equal. They're all equally poor. And they are subject, the more the government gives you, the more you are dependent on the government for your housing, for your transportation, for your food, for everything else, then you don't dare question any of that because they may cut you off. And what we've found, as people like me have argued the economics of all this and how it kills incentive, it kills society. And really, I mean, if everybody is all just sitting there at home getting their paycheck from the government, first of all, where's the check coming from? If somebody isn't creating taxes, then there is no money. If you're not creating wealth, then there is none. And but they're sitting there, then who are the people who are going to invent new things, who are going to look at new ways? to do things. It was individuals who saw an opportunity to better themselves, to really succeed at what they were doing, that invented cars, that invented electricity, invented airplanes, and all that. What we're hearing now, though, is that all of those things are now horrible. The horrors of the 20th century industrial revolution. They say it over and over again. Al Gore has said it. The horrors of the 20th century, the horrors of having indoor plumbing, indoor lighting, indoor heat, and all that, all the horror of it all. This is what they do. But they are using all of these things to divide us, to get us all to fight among ourselves, while they're systematically taking away everyone's rights. And this idea, and I want to make this perfectly clear, when you're looking at your single family neighborhood versus, I mentioned, public housing, well, that public housing is, people living in that are forced into that. People who are on welfare programs and so forth aren't allowed to earn money if they're on that, or they'll lose it. And then when the government is running the property, then you've got a bureaucrat who doesn't care if the heat's not working, the window's broken, the air conditioning's down. He doesn't care. He still gets his paycheck. A private property owner does. But here's what we see happening as this is growing. The smart growth programs being put into place are really moving to have more and more rental property instead of people owning homes. As you mentioned, your generation, the younger generations, really don't even want to own homes, and no responsibility at all. I don't want to have to deal with it all. Well, so now landlords are being attacked by government programs. They've raised taxes on them. They've raised costs of them doing business. Now, landlords are going out of business like crazy. If landlords go out of business, and we're killing free enterprise, we're killing private property ownership, what is the alternative? All housing is government housing, and the landlord is government. And so you look at these horrible places that, we're not allowed to say words like ghetto anymore, but that's exactly what we're talking about. These people are stuck there. That will become the norm. And if you don't believe that, take a look at the Soviet Union, Russia. When the communists took over, all of this stuff was put in place. Eventually, people began to, with this universal income they were giving everybody, the hard workers, the producers, started saying, he's getting the same thing I'm getting. He hasn't done a darn thing. I'm not going to do it either. Why is it that in the shelves, in stores, in communist countries, they're always bare? Because of this. Why is it that today our shelving is starting to go bare? Because these programs being put in place. It's just step by step. This is how they're putting it all together. And every bit of this gives government more power. And once government takes power, it never relinquishes it. It is a very difficult thing to deal with.
So what do you recommend to friends, family members, people that have no idea, other than, obviously watching and learning from people like yourself? How do you expose them to what is actually going on when they're pushing socialism and what that leads to? And obviously we have plenty of examples with other countries and what that led to, but what do you recommend as far as, your piece of advice of how to expose others to what's actually happening?
That's a very, very good question. And it's the most difficult question that we're dealing with. As I've been trying to put out the alarms on this since the 1992 Earth Summit, even before that, of what was coming, what it is, who's behind it, what's going on with it. But and they grabbed hold of the education system, and we're no longer teaching basic academics of reading, writing, arithmetic. We're doing behavior modification to make sure that all of the children come out of schools with the proper attitudes, values, and beliefs to accept this garbage. And this is a big problem, because we now have 2 or 3 generations that have gone through that. It's worse today than ever, but some older generations have been through it and don't understand the economics of it and so forth. So that makes it very difficult to talk about. The other thing is that people are intimidated by, as government gets bigger and bigger and more powerful, then, well, there's no way. You can't fight City Hall. You can't do anything about this. The truth of the matter is that's not true. And one of the reasons that after working on lots of issues, I worked on the education issues, trying to fight it when Bill Clinton was president. I've worked on trying to expose the total surveillance society of every single thing we do is watched and controlled. But I decided to go after defense of property rights. And the reason I did that was because the sustainable development, which is the program of Agenda 21, has some kryptonite in it. That kryptonite is it cannot be put in place without destroying property rights. And if we can defend property rights, then we can slow it down or even stop it. And we have been working now, particularly in this last couple of years, almost full time on creating tools for people to fight back and teaching them how to do this. And what we're really, where we run into opposition on this is people think, well, you can't do anything on the local level. Actually, the local level is exactly the place to fight back. And the other side knows that. That's where they're doing all these things. Yes, there are federal programs, and yes, there are state programs that are helping put the stuff in place, but it is, they have gone after every area of our local communities. And I mean, everything from the Chamber of Commerce to the National Association of Realtors are helping put this stuff in place, the Farm Bureau, and so forth. They have moved into all these areas. And if we can organize on the local level, it's what I call building a freedom pod. Don't worry about your neighbor community and so forth, but your community, where you're looking at your elected officials, what kind of programs are they putting in place, who's behind them. These non-governmental organizations flood City Hall, and they are in the shadows behind your elected officials. And what they're doing there, every one of these NGO groups has their experts at one or so of these programs, at least one of them. They know exactly how to write it up and present it. They know exactly how to apply for federal grants to bring it in and fund it. So they come up to your city councilman and they're saying, oh, got it all right here in a box for you and got the money for you too. You don't even have to think about it. Eventually, even if you've elected good people to city council, everywhere they go, they are hearing these programs and they're hearing no opposition to them. And so they begin to think, well, this is the proper role of government. The main argument is everybody's doing it. This is what I run into constantly. And so what we're teaching people is how to organize on the local level, create that freedom pod. As I said, the targets here are free enterprise, private property, individual liberty. And one of the things we talk about is how to research. First of all, you got to know your enemy. You got to know what's coming up. And going into research, every community now has a comprehensive development plan to put this in place. And you can go in and usually they're online. And so if you can find them, you can look at them and see what they plan to do. First of all, you may find, usually as they're building these smart growth communities, they will go into the lowest income areas and they'll say, we're going to spruce all this up. It's going to be bright and shiny. It'll be just wonderful for our community. And we're going to go in there and do this. And they've got all these NGOs in the background who are bringing in the grant programs for it and so forth. Well, truth of the matter is, people living in those neighborhoods do own their own property. Many of them do. Some of them own little businesses, little mom and pop shops and so forth. And I asked the question, as they are going to bring all of these, this new sharp, bright, shiny stuff coming in, is one of those existing laundromats going to be one of them that they'll bring in there? Is it going to be one of the local grocery stores they're going to bring in there? Repair shop, whatever that may be? Nope. That's not who they bring in. It's global corporations that are now the grocery stores, the hotels, the, the stores and so forth. And what you have done then, those people have had their lives destroyed, and they don't have any choice. They are forced onto federal programs, welfare programs and so forth. And their hopes, their dreams of their lives are destroyed. What you can do as you're researching into this and looking into the neighborhoods, what they plan to do, you can find who the victims are going to be. Go down there and meet with them, talk with them, tell them what's going to happen here, and you can recruit them into your movement. The worst nightmare of the people putting these things in place is if you get minorities and the lower income people on your side, because this is how they would divide and conquer, is they're splitting us all apart. That, the whole thing of white privilege and all that kind of thing, those are all tools designed to get us all fighting each other so they can move in and put these programs in place. That's one of the things you can do. The other thing, as you look through that comprehensive plan, look for one single sentence that says anything about protection of private property. And it's not there. They don't have a word. I haven't found one yet where that exists. And we have some different tools that we've put together. One of them is a resolution to protect citizens' property rights. All this resolution says three things. It says, if the community, the government, whatever level, is going to discuss something that's going to affect your property, they'll bring you into the discussion. There's a radical idea. Second thing is, if they decide to go ahead and do whatever they're going to do and it costs you monetarily, they'll pay you for it. Third thing it says is they're not going to be able to bring all their planners with their measuring sticks and their cameras and everything else on your property without your permission. And we've taught people to bring this before city council and say to them, ladies, gentlemen, as you're bringing these planners, these plans into our community, I just got one question for you. What guarantees do I have that you'll protect my property rights? And I have it on video in some places where they do this. They'll say, well, I'm a property owner too. Of course we'll protect property rights. And we just teach people, just smile and say, really happy to hear you say that, but I'd like to have it in writing, please. Right. Watch their heads blow off. Roanoke, Virginia, where the first time we did this, and that's where I've got video, the head of the, I think it was the county commission there. And they said, well, we'll take this under advisement. We'll look at it. Lady who did it goes back the next week and says, what say you? What, you had a chance to look at it? And the head of the council said, well, I can tell you right now, I'm not going to sign that. And she said, why? Well, I'm not going to debate you over it. Well, I don't want to debate. I just want to know why you won't sign it. He said, because I believe there's a larger agenda afoot here. Yeah, there is, but not, this is a tool that you can begin to, if they won't sign this, then you've got a weapon. Why won't your county commissioners, your city councilmen protect your property, your private property, if they're taking away like crazy?
And there's a place we can get this online?
Yeah, it's on our website at americanpolicy.org. It's right on the front page on there.
Gotcha.
You can download it. Another one we have, when people are running for office, is when they are most apt to listen to people because they want to pretend like they care, And so we've put together a candidate's promise to protect citizens' property rights. And it has various things on here. And you go up to a candidate and say, hey, I just want to know how you stand on property rights. And will you sign this pledge? And they're more apt to do it at that point. And if they do, good, file it away and watch what they do once they're elected. Are they going to stick to it or not? If not, you've got a weapon. If they refuse to sign it, you got a weapon right now. Why won't they protect property rights? And so that's the Citizens Pledge to Protect Property Rights. And we also have created a city survey. And if you can go through with your researchers and answer all the questions on this survey, you'll know everything there is to know about your community. And then you'll find out where you need to focus and to fight and so forth. There is one other thing that I have been talking about as I go around and speak. I understand that it's very difficult to get people involved and get them to speak out and so forth on doing this stuff. It's intimidating. I mean, who has the guts to go up there and stand in front of city councils and county commissions, or they're sitting on those benches up high looking down at you and they grant you 3 minutes to talk to them and so forth. And most people, these policies are so complicated, so convoluted, that people will sit there and maybe I don't understand, maybe I don't know how to affect this. And so it intimidates people. And yet it's growing into the millions now of people who are affected by these programs, who want to do something, and they're looking for ways to get involved. One of the things, I was speaking down in South Carolina just a few weeks ago, and I brought this one up because this issue came up about being afraid to step forward. And I said, what if you would put together a grading system of, first of all, the policies that they've put in place, and then those who voted for them. If you did a grading system from 1 to 10, 1 being total tyranny, 10 being freedom's heroes, and does it and you look at all the criteria, does it protect property rights? Does it protect local businesses? Does it citizens' choices for their own lives? Those 3 pillars of freedom, those would be your, what you judge it by. And where does it stand on there? And then you grade your city councilman based on how they voted for it. I guarantee you there's not a politician in this country that wants somebody in their community grading them a 2, and they will fight when you do that. They will start to argue, that's not true, blah, 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 blah. Well, once they've done that, they have now opened it up to a public debate, and that's in your favor, because now you can begin to take out those programs they voted for and start to say, where in here does it say property rights are protected? Where in here does it say it's lowered taxes on businesses or pulled back regulations and so on and so forth? Tell me where, councilman. Now you got them. The people I was speaking to that day got really excited about that idea because they could see easily how they could do that. And I begin to think that's absolutely something that people should start with, because this is what's going to get you immediate attention with your group that you put together, and it's going to get you publicity. And that's a great way to get started. It's going to get people involved. We've put together a manual, the Activist Handbook: How to Fight Back in Your Local Community, and it covers these things. And it covers the research. It covers, we've broken it down, the various people who can join, getting people to work on things. If there's something they're interested in, then they're much more apt to do it. And so you have these various categories, and researchers is one. Another category is the watchers. The watchers, say 5 or 6 people who volunteer to go to every single public meeting. All they have to do is sit and listen, maybe record if they can, take notes of what's going on. You'll learn who the NGOs are that are operating on all this stuff. You'll learn which councilmen are the ones leading this whole policy and so forth. You get information. Then the third category are the agitators. They're the ones that are bold enough to go in and speak. And they organize if you get 4 or 5 of these people, and they can organize their talk. I mean, you get that whole 3 minutes to go and speak to them. You don't want to all be saying the same thing. Each one should have a little more piece to it and so forth. And be there to speak out. Another thing is social media. I'm working very closely with a group in Shreveport, Louisiana, called the Caddo Alliance for Freedom. They started with 5 people that were not political. They went to their city councilman and tried to talk to him about some things they were doing there that they didn't agree with. And he basically patted them on the head and said, "You're nice boys, but you're not going to have any influence on this. This is just the way it's done." Well, one of the guys who was leading it said, "That's what changed him that day." Says, "Yes, I am." They went in. What they did was the Caddo Lake around there is it runs between Louisiana and Texas, and people have their own docks there, all kinds of different ways, maybe their own little beach, things like that. And they began to learn that these things were going to be closed down. They weren't going to be allowed to have those. Even if you had a truck that you were, a company truck that you would park in your driveway at night because you drove it back and forth, that one's going to be allowed. You ever hear a homeowners association won't allow you to have a flag flying in your front yard or put your Christmas decorations up? Same kind of thing. They began to put together flyers with photographs on it of all these things, a specific thing you weren't going to be allowed to do, whether it was a boat dock or the truck or whatever. And then they put a circle through it with a slash. And they showed people, they went door to door handing these out, and they showed people how they were already victims of this. The other thing they did was they created a social media page. They ended up getting several hundred people to show up at every city council meeting, and over 4,000 people on that social media page. Today, they have two of their people have been assigned to the development board, and they just put in a resolution on the protection of property rights. And that city councilman now is saying, "What can I do for you fellas?" And other communities are now saying, "How did you do that? What can we do?"
That's
It's
awesome.
Freedom Pods. It spreads. This is what we're teaching. This is what we're doing. And it's starting to catch on. People are starting to get it. One of the things that has really helped us in this is the left has moved so rapidly. They've gotten arrogant, and they are now admitting, where they used to put everything in nice little language and hide out what they plan to do. We're just protecting the environment. Who could be against that?
Right.
Make a better life for us all. Now they're openly saying nobody's going to own anything, and
Klaus
all
Schwab.
that.
Yeah.
Exactly.
You'll own
Charles
nothing and be
Schwab
happy.
is the Great Reset. He put out a book entitled The Great Reset. It's titled COVID-19, The Great Reset. And he openly says that this book was written based on what they learned from the COVID lockdowns on how society should be, created. And he said in there, people will own nothing and they'll be happy about it,
Right.
all that. Well, it's interesting to note, the lockdown started in March of 2020. The book came out in August of 2020. He learned what in 5 months? And it's a total lie. It was written before. I mean, I've written 3 books. I know when you go to write a book, you first of all have to do the research, come up with a concept, then do the research, then actually write it, then find a printer and a publisher and all that and get it in. 5 months, he's either Superman or he's a liar. It's already written. This is their plan. One of the things that was happening, we were beginning to win the battle against climate change. We were beginning to show people this was an absolute lie. There is no science whatsoever to back up the lies they're telling on climate change. And that we're going to have the earth is warming up, and so there's no evidence of that whatsoever. And when I was a kid back in my hometown, we used to have a guy who did the weather, and he always started a weather forecast saying, whether it's cold or whether it's hot, we'll always have weather or not. Well, yeah, that's what we have. Sometimes it's cold, sometimes it's hot, sometimes it's raining, sometimes it's not, sometimes we have storms. There is no evidence whatsoever that any of those things are on the rise. One indication is that we are kind of going through a cooling period. It's been going for about 10 years. And that's because the sun, when it has storms on it, sun storms, that's when we get hot. That we feel that. when it gets quiet and it's not really having these storms, it gets colder, and that we're going through that. And so, there's no evidence whatsoever that man is doing anything to hurt the environment, to, cause climate change and so forth. So, um, now the reason I go through all that is because the other side was feeling that when they did surveys of people, and they would ask them, what are the most important issues that you're dealing with? If climate change was on it, it was last. In most cases, it wasn't on people's list. They were getting to panic on that, because keep in mind, people who, through history, people who wanted to control the world, what they did in the past, whether it was Napoleon or Alexander the Great, or it was Stalin or Hitler, or any of these people, what they did was they put armies together and they went in and they conquered people, they broke things, they killed people, and they subjugated them. That's how they take control. These guys are diabolical. They figured out a way to get us to voluntarily give up our liberties and help these globalists subjugate us because of the fear of climate change. How many environmentalists have said to me, it doesn't matter how many rights you think you have if you don't have a planet to stand on? And that's the argument. And the fear. They were losing the fear, and these programs weren't going through. What did they do? They came up with COVID. It
I was
was a
getting ready to
trial
ask you
run.
about that.
Yep. They came up with a trial run. Think about it. In one day, as they locked down the world economy, they literally put in place all of these things I've just described. Controls over our lives, controls over our economy, controls over production, on and on and on. In one day, at least temporarily, they did that. And they measured it. They watched to see what these things were planned. I've got scripts from the Rockefeller Foundation and some others from 4 or 5 years before all this happened, of a trial run of these things. And if you'd read it, it's like a script of exactly what they did. They knew. So now we have the Great Reset. What's the Great Reset? We're going back to climate change, because all of COVID happened because of people damaging the environment. That's the argument. That's the diabolical argument for the whole thing. And everybody, oh, okay, and wear my mask everywhere, and I won't touch anything, and I'm going to wash my hands every time I move somewhere, and fear.
Exactly.
That's the factor that they put in place, and so that's what they've done. Just to tell you how this all fits in.
Yeah. So you believe, just to be clear, with COVID specifically, because I've been obviously skeptical from the beginning as well. And obviously, the more I've dug in, I've seen patents that were created, before the times that
patent for a disease
that apparently didn't even exist at the time, and another thing. So, how do you think this all kind of coincides with, the timing of it is impeccable with, the Agenda 21 and all this stuff happening, and, a big excuse to lock the world down and gain more control during this time. Are you in the belief that you think this all also coincides with the New World Order of what the Bible speaks on as well? Or do you think that's a separate thing? Maybe we're not to that time yet, and that's later down the road.
Don't know. And I look at history and I see so many times we've had horrible things. I mean, look at the Holocaust in World War II, and so forth. It depends on where you're living, that you begin to think, oh, this is the end.
But technology, that's the one thing that's way different now.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. And it's definitely everywhere, and may well be as we're heading to that. And I hope it is. I hope that we can cleanse all this and everything, but I'm not going to sit and wait for it. And we've got to stand up, and
I agree.
Jesus did that. He went into the money changers in the churches and
Flipped the tables and
flipped the tables, everything. He took action. And that's what they expect us to do. We cannot sit back and wait. There are too many people that I run into today that are saying, oh, the Lord's coming back and we don't have to worry about all this. And in the end, we win. I hear it over and over and over again.
That's
And
a dangerous road of
yeah,
belief to go on, of just,
yeah.
it's beyond us. Let's not even worry about it. Like,
I've actually fantasized about God receiving all of these constant prayers about fix this for me, fix this for me. Does he get exasperated? You know, I gave you common sense. I gave you the ability to move forward and make your own decisions and so forth. And here you are, you know, stop yelling at me. That's a fantasy I have once in a while on it. But and I will continue to fight until I don't have to.
he
It's
helps
just that
those who
simple.
prepare, right? It's like the two people,
Exactly. Yeah.
one
Yeah.
prepared for rain, one didn't. One got rain, one didn't. So I think you're right on the money there. You know, you need to do everything you can while you can. And the good
Exactly.
news is I'm seeing a lot of people stand up. I'm seeing, you see the convoy up in Canada and Ottawa, and you see from countries all over the world, people are starting to stand up against these mandates. And it's a beautiful thing. And I think it's only growing. You know, it's moving in the right direction from what I see anyway.
And I think it's really interesting to watch how these globalists are reacting to that. And I'm sure you've seen all this where they've even shut off the underpass cameras on the highways in Canada, so nobody can show
Yeah.
this caravan of trucks. The CNN and MSNBC and those guys won't even talk about it. And
There's
it's
millions
very,
of people all over the world standing up, and they're not
yeah,
showing one. They're saying it's like fringe, like a couple hundred people, or
yeah,
meanwhile you got 100,000 truckers, you know, in one
yeah.
area.
And the amazing thing, the Canadian, I think equivalent of CNN or whatever, did a whole story the other day saying that the truckers were coming to Ottawa to protest the road conditions that they have to drive on.
Mm,
That's what they've come up with because of
right.
snow or something, you know. And they'll lie, lie, lie. This is what's obvious. This is what's interesting to watch. That when they get caught, the way they try to twist it and you know, throw it right back. You know, one of the 10 rules for radicals of how to do things. Number one is blame your opposition for what you do. You know, cut into their credibility and so forth. And I watch this daily as I see them doing these
Yeah, they're
things
good at
and
that.
blaming our side for it. And I'll tell you something. You know, there's all kind of speculation about January 6th and what happened there. And I just know that that was not our people who started the trouble there. I look at the people who were causing the trouble. They don't look anything like our people look. We don't dress all in black and carry shields and skateboards and things like that, or wear antlers and, you know, horns and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, yeah.
We don't do that. And I did see on the day all this happened, I saw a video which has disappeared. That video showed a bus pull up and these Antifa guys getting off the bus and putting on Trump
I saw the same
material.
video. I was about to bring it up.
Yeah,
I saw them all changing into Trump gear,
yeah.
getting
Come
ready
on,
for it.
follow us. We're going inside.
Right. And
Yeah,
then I also saw police officers removing gates, waving them in, trying to get them into the Capitol. There
yeah.
was a lot of collaboration
Well,
going on.
a year earlier that here in Virginia, we were preparing to have a major uprising against the legislature, which was putting all kinds of gun control bills and laws in place. And all the pro-gun people and stuff were really going to converge on Richmond. And I happened to be co-sponsoring a conference in Richmond that weekend, just before that Monday that was going to happen. And I was at dinner on Friday evening, and one of the gentlemen there said they had absolute proof that Antifa had rented 6 buses and they were heading to Richmond on that Monday, and they were going to be wearing pro-gun gear and so forth, and we're going to cause trouble. I put out an action alert on Facebook that night, telling what I had just heard. I had 14,000 responses to it, and all kinds of Antifa people threatening me, yelling at me, liar, 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 all this kind of stuff. And the good news was they didn't show up on that Monday to cause the trouble. This is a tactic that they do, and they use it to make us look bad. Go back to, there was a gentleman named Lyndon LaRouche, who was an avowed communist. He ran for president several times. And when the Tea Party was in full force back in the late 90s, I guess, Lyndon LaRouche himself took a picture of Barack Obama and he drew a Hitler mustache on it. And they produced these, and his people would show up at Tea Party rallies and put up this banner of Obama with a Hitler mustache. And then some of their other people would start yelling and screaming about it and start causing violence as well. And what would happen is the Tea Party people thought their people were getting attacked, because here was an anti-Obama thing, which they were in favor of, and they would come running to their help. The news media then began to report, this is the Tea Party causing violence in this. So they were able to get, again, discredit our side by making it look like we are the ones doing that. I have watched this tactic over and over and over again, and I have no doubt in my mind that that's exactly what happened on January 6th. So
I think we're on the same page there. So where would you say we're at in the process now, right now, like from where they started implementing this agenda and where we're at now? How far away from the finish? Where do you think we're at in that process right now?
I'll be honest with you, I have never been more energized. After working all these years on this and not being able to get people to hear what I was saying in many cases, all of a sudden I see people rising up. I see things taking place. I believe that what's facing us right now is the most important issue facing us is the issue of voter integrity. If we can get an honest election, we can wipe them out in a day, all across the country, and they know it. They are doing everything in their power to stop that from happening. They're terrified that we're going to rise up and do that. So that becomes the most important issue, is ballot box security and election integrity. And then we can worry about the rest of these things when that's taken care of.
The thing that worries me is I hear so many people worried to even put their vote out there anymore, because they're like, well, it didn't matter. It didn't affect, it didn't do anything. So I think that scares me that so many people are still, they've lost total faith in the system, that they feel like, what's the point?
I totally agree with you. And I had somebody say that to me the other day based on an article that I put out. Well, I'm not going to vote anymore until they get this fixed. You have to vote. You have to be there and be involved in it. And because,
then you guarantee your fate. Then
I know that in 2016, they thought they had it fixed for Hillary Clinton, and they were shocked that Trump beat her. What Trump did was he had such an overwhelming vote. He won, I believe, by much more than what was recorded, and they didn't have enough in place to take it. And that, in 2020, then they made sure that wasn't going to happen again. They really came out and pulled it together. But if our people sit there and say that, well, I'm not going to be there, we can overcome them. We have the opportunity now to overwhelm them no matter what they do. I am seeing now minorities and even some of these immigrants coming in and so forth that are not in favor of Biden, that don't like what they're doing and want to turn this around. We have the greatest opportunity we've ever had. We've got to get control of that ballot box, but we've got to be there, and we've got to put that vote in there as well. So we can overwhelm them. That's what we have to do. Here's one of the biggest problems with our side. We don't like government. And we want limited government. We want it to stay out of our lives as much as we can. I am not advocating anarchy. I'm saying that we need limited government to do specific things, but they have way overreached what they're doing. And because we don't like government, here's what we do. First of all, if we get involved in politics, if we get excited about politics, it's to get a guy elected president. We got to get our guy in there. Oh, and then we win. Well, okay, we got our guy in there now. I can go home. I don't have to do this anymore. That's what we do. I saw it happen under Ronald Reagan. I saw it happen under Trump. And then we aren't getting our people elected to city councils and so forth. The idea of going to a city council meeting and sitting in there is just, it's a headache. I don't want to do that. I got a family to raise. I've got a job to do. The result of that is that we've ended up with more government, the very thing we don't want, because we didn't participate. What I'm trying to teach people to do now is don't wait until an issue comes up to get everybody involved and go after it. Put together a permanent infrastructure to fight for freedom, that you've got the researchers out there, you've got the people ready to speak out on things, you've got your media people ready to go. And so the minute they come up with one of these idiotic plans, that we can kill it right now and not let it raise its head. And this is how we have to be prepared. That's what they do. And yet we sit there and then we twiddle our thumbs. I've had people say to me, we had 100 people show up at city council meeting, and I'll say, well, what happened? Well, nothing, they didn't listen to us. And then I ask them this question: what did you do the next day? Well, nothing, because it didn't work. They were sitting there looking at their watches saying, okay, they're gone. Now let's move forward. They know you're going home and you won't be back. That's what's got to stop. And if we can get people energized to begin to organize, we've got the tools created. I can share them with people and teach them how to organize locally, get that permanent infrastructure put in place, and we can have a revolution for liberty across this country. People are ready. They see finally the damage this stuff is. We've got to take advantage of it. We have millions who are upset about what happened in the last election. They want to do something. They don't know how. They're novices. Get them involved. If all you do is get them to be sitting in seats at City Hall, they don't have to do anything else at City Council meeting. Just sit there. That's power. Hold a sign at a rally. They don't have to say anything. That's power. Get them involved. Maybe eventually they'll look at something somebody else is doing and say, I like that. How do I do that? And then you got them starting to learn, and we teach and we get it done. We only need 10, 20 people in a community, and we can make a huge difference.
I love that. Never underestimate, just the power of just the momentum one person can create. And if you don't know where to start, just start doing anything. Like I said, pick up a sign, show up to an event, just go and listen to start. I think, just getting involved is the main message. And I love that. I wasn't really expecting you to go into this so much of, I love not just informing people, but giving them a plan, how to organize and how to implement and how to, rise up and stand against these people, holding them accountable. And
exactly. Yeah. You begin to look at where's their money come from and who's supporting them. And those are all weapons that you can use. And the number one thing that I come up with is the issue on property rights. Let me share with you something that I'm going to share two quotes with you. And we've talked about sustainable development and smart growth and what those programs are and how they are focusing on your community, moving people into the stack and pack downtown, taking people out of their private property and so forth. And once they've done that, they can control your energy use, they can control your transportation, all those kind of things, and control where you go and what you do. Now, let me share this quote with you and see if this doesn't sound what we hear all the time. One of the reasons why the comprehensive development plan. Well, we don't want to have chaotic growth for the community into the future. We want to make sure everything's well organized, right? Listen to this quote. The chaotic growth of cities will be replaced by a dynamic system of urban settlement. The region is formed by the economic interdependence of the development. from the industrial complex to the industrial area and the industrial region. The region has a single system of transportation, a centralized administration, and a united system of education and research. Does that sound like what we're talking about here? This was written in 1968 by an architect named Alexei Gutenov, a Soviet architect, writing in an article entitled "The Ideal Communist City." That's what we're dealing with. Second thing, let me find it here. What do I do with it? I have so many quotes. It's unbelievable. Where'd it go? Oh, here it is. Hang on a second. Okay. Property in a thing consists not merely in its ownership and possession, but in the unrestricted right of use, enjoyment, and disposal. Anything which destroys any of the elements of property to that extent destroys the property itself. The substantial value of property lies in its use. If the right of use be denied, the property is rendered useless. So this was written by a Supreme Court Justice, Richard B. Sanders, in the state of Washington, when they started having so many of these environmental issues come up affecting property rights. They found out they didn't have a real definition of property. And so they started to, he wrote this for that purpose, for the very thing that we're dealing with. The candidate's promise that I talked about on property rights, it has that quote in it. And it's saying to the candidates, do you support this? And when they talk about the unrestricted right of use, the other side goes bonkers over that. I had down in Oklahoma, I had a state legislator who was attempting to use this quote in a bill. They got every mayor in the state to converge, saying, if they make an unrestricted right of use, you'll lose your power as a mayor. You won't be able to control your city. And so this is what they did. And
I'm in Oklahoma.
Yeah.
I'm here.
Well, let me just defend it this way. Since the beginning of human settlements, we have had nuisance laws. If somebody has loud music, a light shining in your bedroom window, whatever, you have a recourse to that. What's hysterical about this is the excuse it's universal that they always use on this. I'm not joking about this. They always use the excuse about unrestricted right of use. If you have unrestricted right of use, somebody is going to put a smelly old pig farm next door to you. They must really hate pigs. They always use that example. Well, and what they put together with smart growth, sustainable development programs is all one size fits all. But in a free society, you own your property, your neighbor owns his property. If he puts a smelly old pig farm next door, if he has a bright light shining in your bedroom window so you can't sleep at night, if he's got loud music playing, you can walk over to him and say, Charlie, I can't sleep at night because if Charlie's a good guy, he says, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't know. And he takes care of it. If Charlie's a jerk, you can take him to court and file a nuisance complaint against him. That's how citizens deal with citizens. Sure. What they're dealing with here is top-down control where you have no right to deal with your neighbor and what they're doing. And they come in and they take your property for a development. They take your property for whatever they want to use it for. Now they want to bring in these government housing projects into your single-family neighborhood and destroy your property values. That's the difference between freedom and control. So there it is.
Well, I know we're getting to the end here. I would love to just real quick as a summary, the best way that you know how, if you can, before we close out here, you can really dumb it down for us, for so much so that a child could understand. Like, could you paint that picture real quick of if they have their way, because I really want to drive this home for people of how serious this is and how important it is to stand up right now and what is on the line here. So if you could just kind of paint that picture the best you can, dumbed down for us, what does their world look like at 2030 if they do accomplish all of their goals and they get all of this through? What does that world look like?
Let me start with this. One of my allies through this whole fight was a lady named Rosa Corey. Rosa unfortunately just passed away this past year, but she was the head of Democrats against Agenda 21. She gave them fits because she was liberal on a lot of things, but she understood this issue. And she described Agenda 21 sustainable development like this. Agenda 21 sustainable development is the action plan to inventory and control all land, all water, all minerals, all plants, all animals, all construction, all means of production, all information, all energy, and all human beings in the world. Inventory and control. And that is the best definition I have ever heard of all this. We are looking at a society where no one, as Klaus Schwab said, owns anything. The government will pass down your existence and your housing, your food, and so forth. What will happen in such a society is that no one will do anything because they don't have to. And when that happens, all of society collapses. The only reason why the Soviet Union lasted as long as it did, even Cuba is continuing to last as they are, is because the West was there. The West supplied things they needed, cars and trucks and energy and things like that. They brought it in there. Sometimes it was given to them, and sometimes they bought it, whatever. But their people weren't producing anything, and they find that your individual choices don't exist, and your ability to live your life, if you have hopes and dreams, will not happen. That will be decided by somebody else. We're already seeing that happen. If you want to know what our society is going to look like as all these things are put in place, take a look at 2020 and 21, when everything was shut down. People were not working. They couldn't go out. They couldn't, do anything, and you had to wear the mask and all of that. That is a trial run of what our society is going to look like.
Yeah, it's not easy to think about. It's almost unbelievable, but we're seeing it happen before our eyes. So we know it's coming, but it's hard to actually wrap your mind around what's coming.
I didn't comply with it then. I don't comply with it now, and I don't intend to comply with it ever. And all I can say is, don't despair. Don't look down in defeat. You will always lose as soon as you say it's over, we can't do anything. Then it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. I see now more activity, more hope, more people taking action than ever before. We need to coordinate it. We need to make sure it's effective. But I see they are terrified of what we are accomplishing right now, and they are going to continue to deride us and put us down for it and call us any name they want. The old saying, sticks and stones, they
Sure.
break my bones, but names will never hurt me. That's I don't care what they call me. I consider the source, but I'm excited. I'm energized. We can win this fight, and I intend to.
I love it. Let's end it on a high note. Let's all get active and do more. We can all do more. That's for sure. And if there's anything that I can do, like I'd maybe after this, we can talk a little bit more for a second, but I would love to get more active myself. I've been thinking about it. I don't know, other than just doing what I'm doing and trying to get some information from people that are experts on the subject. But I wish, there was something more that I could do locally in my area and maybe make something happen there. So I encourage others to do the same.
First of all, if folks will go to our website at americanpolicy.org, I've got a massive archive of articles on all of these issues, give you all the background information you want on any issue you think of. And I've written a couple of books. My book, Sustainable, The War on Free Enterprise, Private Property, and Individuals, has all the details, all the background, and so forth in it. I actually went out and one day somehow and surprised myself and wrote a novel based on all this called Erase. And it's been compared to Atlas Shrugged, 1984, Michael Crichton's State of Fear, which to my utter shock. But then what we've done now is put together the manual on how to fight back. All those tools are there. And, those are, we designed them, all this, so that you had what you needed to fight back. And we're now working on trying to put together training seminars and so forth to help people to do that, to learn. So.
Perfect. Can you say the website one more time for me? We'll put it up on the screen.
Yeah, it's americanpolicy.org.
Perfect. And is there a specific place that you would like to promote for yourself for people to be able to find you and follow you?
Oh, there. It's
Just there? Okay.
you can we have an email list and we send out alerts all the time. I got a new one coming
Gotcha.
out this week on the election stuff, and you can get on there and just keep you up to date with what we're doing. And we've got about 37,000 people on that now, and it's growing. So yeah.
Well, I'll definitely hop on there. I'll start following and start getting more active. So I
All right.
appreciate you sitting down with me. It was a pleasure. I'm definitely excited to dig more into this and learn more. And maybe one day down the line, we can sit down again and go a little more deeper and into what's going on more
Absolutely.
currently.
Yeah. Well, thank you for the opportunity, and anything I can do, let me know.
I appreciate it. All right. Thank you, Tom. Have a good one.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
See you later.